Okay, so in today's reading, the reading is Solutions to Post-Service Delivery in Papua New Guinea. What we are going to do today is we are going to look at the lecture that I gave on decentralization, and at least to pick up some ideas there into how to go about in understanding this reading here. Okay, so in the lecture, let me put on the lecture on decentralization. The lecture we tried to talk about or discuss the argument of both economic and the democratic argument on decentralization. Okay, the economic argument on decentralization tends to take on the model of efficiency and effectiveness in the delivery of decentralization. Okay, that's on one hand, and on the other hand, okay, there is this democracy and empowerment argument. Okay, now what is this argument here? And in the lecture, you may recall that I went through various papers. Okay, and one of these examples here, okay, Saito 2011, okay, argues that the practical application of economic efficiency of local governments to bring better service does not always materialize as issues of local government lack capacity in the delivery of services. So this is our challenge here in the decentralization in Papua New Guinea. Okay, when we talk about efficiency and effective models, we are talking about the idea of bringing service delivery from the center, or for example in our case, Waigani, down to our people. Okay, and we have seen in various transformation of the decentralization system itself. Okay, starting from the organic law on provincial local level government in 1976, right down to the 1995 the JDP BPC, or the organic law on the provincial and local level government. Okay, and various changes in 1997, and in the famous, okay, or the recent one, which is the DDA, District Development Act of 2014. Okay, but what we are trying to say here before we go on to the reading is introduce the idea of the economic model. Okay, the best approach in saying that the best approach of decentralization, okay, is to promote effective and efficiency in the service delivery provision. And now we went on to say that, okay, the economic model follows the indirect approach to decentralization. Okay, meaning that, okay, from the top down, from the service, from the center, Waigani, down to the people. Okay, on the other end, the democratic and empowerment model talks about people's participating in decentralization or actively participate in the decentralization itself. Okay, now participation stems to, okay, argue in two approaches. One is the direct approach and the indirect approach. Okay, indirect approach sort of favors the economic model of efficiency and effectiveness. That is through the service delivery mechanism to the establishment of various institutions. Okay, the direct approach is people actually participating in the decentralization process. Okay, so in the lecture we've talked about these two ideas here. Okay, now why is this reading important in the discussion? Okay, this is the reading, one of the reading for the decentralization lecture titled Solutions to Post-Service Delivery in Papua New Guinea by Ron Duncan and Chris Banga. Okay, this article was published in 2018. It's fairly new and it's of current. Okay, and that's why we are using it to understand the issues that Papua New Guinea currently face in the decentralization process. Now we'll go through this article here. Okay, so in any standard articles, in a peer-reviewed or journal articles, you would normally see the structures here. Okay, you have an abstract, you have the introduction. Okay, the introduction basically introduces the article, Okay, and then we have the literatures. The literatures that talks about decentralization. So the aim of the literature is to build a context around decentralization itself. So in this case, the international literature talks about various models that is implemented elsewhere, and publications or papers published on those various models of decentralization and the challenges faced by these countries here. And then we have after the literature, the article narrows down to PNG. The challenges of decentralization in Papua New Guinea. Here you have what the main theme or the main idea that the author wants to talk about. So here you would see the demand side issue, and the supply side issues. So let us start by asking this question. I believe this article is trying to ask about, well, generally, I went through the article. The article tries to introduce the concept of the supply issue, or the supply perspective of decentralization, if you may call it, and the demand side of decentralization, or demand perspective. Now we will talk about these two perspectives according to this article here. But the overall question that I want to ask, in order for us to understand this article, is why is there an emphasis on the demand perspective of decentralization in the current literature today? Or this is an example of one. Now, the main idea or the main theme that I picked up from this article, and I believe I've written it down here on this piece of paper. The main theme here is improvements to decentralization will come as a result on the emphasis to increase the demand perspective for decentralization. That's the main argument or the main theme here. Now, in order to reach the argument, the main argument here, let's go through understanding both supply perspective, supply and demand side, or supply and demand perspective, according to Ron Duncan and Chris Banger in this article here. Let's go to understanding supply perspective. Now let me see. Let's go down. Okay. So what is supply perspective? Now, supply perspective, I believe in the lecture that we went through, the supply perspective follows this the economic argument of decentralization here, and hinges on efficiency and effectiveness of decentralization. Now, you can see how that argument sort of translate into, let's say, the story of decentralization in PNG. So decentralization started off from the Organic Law on Provincial and Local Level Government, Organic Law on Provincial Government 1976, down to the 1995 Organic Law on Provincial and Local Level Government. So the idea is to bring decentralization from the central government to the local level, and trying to negotiate or skip the provincial level government to avoid the errors faced in the provincial level government. So that sort of follows the line of efficiency and effectiveness argument. However, in the supply side, according to this article here, is basically talking about the state's delivery of decentralization itself. Now, particularly in the regard of the financial or the funding aspect of decentralization, and the delegation or devolution of roles and responsibilities for that matter. Okay, so supply perspective issues, okay, have come about as a result of, okay, various hurdles along the way in the decentralization process itself. Okay, and one of the major issues that the supply side, remember, supply side is talking about the state's ability to provide, okay, decentralization from the top, okay, from the top, so top down. Okay, so the two issues that was talked about by Ron Duncan and Chris Banga in this article is the inconsistency of public funds, funds, okay, enabled for decentralization, okay, funding that is appropriate for decentralization purposes. Okay, so inconsistency of funding over time has impacted, okay, a lot of development projects delivered through decentralization. Okay, there is one issue here. Okay, now, okay, for example, here, if I may read from the first paragraph, third sentence, okay, here, okay, so the World Bank and the NEFC, okay, the recent study by World Bank have highlighted that, okay, release of funding from the treasury to the province was inconsistent, okay, and often dispersed too slowly or too late to be spent effectively. So it started off by saying that the issue of the supply side, okay, tends to be in relation to the inconsistency of funds delivered. Okay, and then the article continues on to say, follow up, okay, in the study of the health expenditure in 2011 and 2012 highlight, okay, another issue here, okay, and that is the confusion, okay, over the division of responsibilities in these fundings here. Okay, so by saying that, okay, you have the, let's say, for example, the national health department, and then you have the provincial health authorities. Okay, where does the demarcation lie in terms of funding for these health projects, for that matter? Okay, because there is a duplication of fund roles and responsibility from the center, Waigani, and provinces that also affect the delivery of decentralization. Okay, and that contributes to the issue and difficulty faced in the supply side of decentralization. Okay, now, number one, what is it? The slow inconsistency of funds. Okay, and number two, the confusion over roles and responsibilities, or duplication of function. Okay, and you can see here, after that, in this section here, it sort of gives various examples and various studies that tries to more or less, okay, bring out this issue of inconsistency in funding and lack of roles and responsibilities, or duplication of roles and responsibilities. Okay, and okay, and that okay, let's okay, so let's, okay, so here the paper goes on to really discussing how DDA came about. Okay, so here, let's see, page, what is it, this 502, second paragraph. Okay, now this also affected, okay, the establishment of DDA also. Okay, so the both authors said that, okay, for example, here, while the DDA Act reduces the opportunities for principal agent problems by reducing the government levels through which the fund transfer takes place, okay, principal agent problems will also exist with the remaining national government to district government transfer unless mechanism can be implemented to reduce severity, okay, as recognized by BED and SMART 22, SMART 27, okay, above, Okay, monitoring of outcomes by the local governments must be an integral part of decentralization. Okay. Now, even when the DDA Act was passed, okay, one of the issues that was highlighted by various studies mentioned here, papers cited here, is the monetary aspect of decentralization here. Okay. Now, the paper went on to highlight another problems of the DDA establishment of DDA itself, and that is the capacity to deliver. Okay, the capacity to deliver the various reforms from the organic law, 1976 organic law on province of government, right down to the 1995 OLP-LLG organic law on the local level government. Okay, have highlighted this issue here. Okay, so the supply perspective operates on the notion of efficiency and effectiveness. Okay. However, in the history of decentralization, coming up to the establishment of DDA Act 2014 and the DDA, the issue tends to be on the capacity of delivering of this decentralization program. Okay, so what the author is trying to say is, for so long, Papua New Guinea have been more focused on the supply side of the issue in strengthening the effective and efficient aspects of decentralization. Okay, but the recent study of findings have noted that starting from the inconsistency of funds delivered, duplication of roles and responsibility. This all had to do with the capacity as a whole to deliver decentralization. So the supply side, the main issue would be the capacity to deliver decentralization. And that is why the author opted to take a new approach in which to ease the issues in relation to decentralization. Now the biggest problem is the monitoring of this decentralization system. The monitoring aspect of it is one of the problem that is hindering the decentralization in PNG. Now, what does the author mean by emphasis on demand side of issue? So here, third sentence, we'll start here. As the World Bank, we'll start reading here. As the World Bank, 2004, one noted, service delivery can be made effective by putting people at the center of service provision by enabling them to monitor and discipline service providers, by amplifying their voice in the policy and by strengthening incentives for providers to service the poor. So this argument here, the demand side, goes or falls in line with our discussion in the lecture about the democratic and empowerment argument of decentralization. So the democratic and empowerment argument argues that citizens must participate directly or indirectly. There must be some form of participation by the citizen to monitor the decentralization process. Absence of citizen participation also affects the delivery of decentralization. So that's the argument that we've talked about in the lecture. Now here, that is the same sort of stance here, by putting people at the center of service delivery so that they can monitor the process of decentralization. As far as transparency and accountability of the system is concerned. Let's look at the issues of some of the issues mentioned here by the demand side. So in the second paragraph, the author acknowledged the creation of the Consultative Implementation and Monitoring Council, the CIMC, okay, which is chaired by the Minister for National Planning and Monitoring and funded by the national government. Okay, there was an initiative on the budget tracking initiative, or called the BTI. Okay, so here BTI is designed to assist communities to understand clearly the government budget process and be able to monitor an expenditure of the allocated funds. The CIMC said that the BTI training program works with LG presidents and ward councillors, ward development committee members, community leaders, NGO leaders, church leaders, and women and youth leaders to equip them to establish expenditure priorities, understand, develop, and review ward plans. Okay, use the appropriate laws and budget information to access funds for the development of projects at the local level government. Okay, so from the demand side, or the demand perspective, okay, the government have established the CIMC and the BTI initiative to track. However, one of the critiques here in this article is affecting the BTI initiative, in which Ron Duncan and Chris Banger highlighted, is the low levels of literacy and numeracy in PNG. Okay, so in order to involve these people at the local level to monitor the fundings, they have to be at certain. There needs to be a certain at a certain level of literacy and numeracy, okay, rate to understand, articulate, okay, or comprehend and articulate the initiatives that is trying to or initiatives provided by the government to monitor decentralization. Okay. So the author doesn't see that this will work because of the low level of literacy and numeracy in Papua New Guinea. On the other hand, the author, okay, has said that there is another alternative, that citizens can participate meaningfully in monitor decentralization, okay, in PNG, okay, that will help to, okay, in the argument of the demand perspective. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, so the issue here, okay, the issue here is that, okay, although government has an initiative to the BTI, the low level of literacy and numeracy will, okay, have a tendency to affect the initiative that is already in place by the government. Okay, the alternative is to have individual assets at the local level government. Okay, for example, here in this the last paragraph here before conclusion, okay, the author acknowledged or stated that the ownership of individual lease titles should also boost the local tax revenues, which in turn should improve transparency of expenditure on service delivery or on services. So, for example, the improved land access should boost business opportunities at the local level and reduce the informal sector, and thereby bring more economic activity in the formal sector and boost the tax revenue. Okay, so if we go up a little bit, so what the alternative to this is, okay, let's see if, okay, so the author is saying that Papua New Guinea has, okay, so the idea here is, if and unless if citizens has some sort of, okay, withholding assets, okay, assets, land, cars, let's say buildings, stores, these are assets. As long as citizens has any form of assets, that in a way, okay, will act, okay, to demand, okay, to demand for roads, business, bridges, schools, okay. So these assets will in a way pool, okay, attract service delivery into the provinces for that matter, okay, or districts or local government. So one way is through the customary the long-term leasing. Okay, for example, here in this paragraph here, wait, I'll highlight it. Okay, so fortunately, let's start from the 2009 revision of the laws relating to land tenure, I believe, relating to the rights and custom, yes, custom land, allows the long-term leasing of customary land by individuals or corporations. Hence, for all Papua New Guineans, there is now the possibility of holding secure long-term leases to customary land. So when this right is exercised, individuals will own assets, okay, the leasehold to land, and the value of services delivered by the government, infrastructure, education, will be capitalized into the value of their land. Thus, the demand for effective delivery of services should increase. Individual households will have an income to monitor how effective the funds that are budgeted for such services are spent, and the growth of individual leases to customary land should complement the CIMC in their efforts to improve the effectiveness of government expenditures on service delivery. So the other alternative is to have individual citizens to have some form of assets, roads or business, for example, trade stores, okay, or leasing out customary land to, let's say, big companies investing in, let's say, for example, oil palm, okay, or cocoa for that matter. What it does is that these assets will attract, okay, service delivery into the area, okay. These assets will demand for road, okay. When the road comes in, okay, it also brings in with other services attached to the road for that matter. So only then citizens, okay, can be able to demand, okay, and also help the CIMC's initiative in an effort to monitor, okay, decentralization, okay. So if you go through this article, it sort of hinges on the idea that, okay, focus of decentralization system, okay, in PNG must now tend towards the demand side of decentralization and not merely concentrating more effort on the supply side of decentralization, okay. So hence the title here, Solutions to Poor Service Delivery in Papua New Guinea, okay. So that concludes the review on the article for Solutions to Poor Service Delivery in Papua New Guinea by Ron Duncan and Chris Banga, okay.